It's a sweltering 36 degrees here in Shanghai today because not only are we in the middle of summer, but the summer split as well. It's been fantastic so far, and I've got Pool Party Frosgren on the desk with me today. It's going to be a fantastic day of LPL action. Frosgren, how are you enjoying summer so far?
Oh, I love summer in Shanghai, but we need to dive right into it. Just behind us.
Oh, yes, we do. We're going to check out some awesome Pool Party cosplays, Frosgren. And it's my favorite time of the League of Legends season. Every time we see those Pool Party skins come out. I mean, Rek'Sai in tubes, it's just fantastic.
I think that the Rek'Sai changes really were probably the biggest nerf to that skin. You know, no longer the ultimate where she gets to ride the jet ski across the map and it's against the rock. I was a fan of jet ski, less of the rock.
We had the season of Renekton as well, just jumping on top of his life tower.
No, I hate that skin.
Why do you hate? That's an amazing skin. It's a crocodile. It's a lifeguard.
Because all they do is sit on the tower.
It's
and
just
jump
like
up and down.
every single solo queue teammate I've ever had. Just sits back, watches people drown.
But of course, we are running what looks like a beautiful promotion for our Pool Party skins, and it's not just about the fan art, guys.
It's about the cosplay as well, because we've got some amazing cosplay. There he is, Mr. Graves himself.
Look at the size of that Super Soaker.
Oh boy. Lee Sin as well. He's wearing sunglasses, Frosgren. I think that's because he's blind.
Really? I did not know that. It's almost like he's part of our solo queue, because I've seen them miss a lot of queues.
Yeah, Raz in the jungle right there, not able to hit those queues on Lee Sin. We've got Miss Fortune as well as the newcomer in AD carry position to the Pool Party squad. It'd be Caitlyn joining us today.
I think it's all about the sunroof window on top of the swimsuit. I know that is the defining feature of the Pool Party Miss Fortune.
And I know we took nerfing Miss Fortune a little bit too far, but really? Super Soakers? That's what she's shooting people with?
Of course, though, 2018 Zoe showcasing the newest swimsuit right there in lime green, a fashion-forward trend, if you will, for this upcoming summer.
It's all about the goggles, Frosgren. It keeps your eyes out of the water so you can see clearly, really puts it together.
And speaking of seeing clearly, I am blinded right now by this Leona cosplay.
They said the sunflower wouldn't work. They said it was a little bit too big of a flower, but it's putting the outfit together, making it just astonishing.
It is the three-piece coordination, the one in the hair, the one on the wrist, but oh my god!
Oh, that's who Rusty wants to be right there.
I want to be.
Graves, not going to be heading into the jungle today, but instead lighting up the party.
That guy is the peak of Greek physique right now. These are, of course, professional cosplayers that are attending us, and Lee Sin doing his part to hold it down.
Fantastic.
Sandals.
Fantastic hand-eye coordination from Lee Sin here.
Look at the finger-pointing skills on that guy.
Always great to see in the newest edition of Caitlyn.
And of course, bringing up the rear, thank you, camera guy, for the full-length body shot, but it's really about the biceps right now.
Brings the sniper to the bottom lane. Annoying to lane against. Fantastic to see in cosplay.
I feel like right now, usually cosplay, it's usually about like the females. It's traditionally a female-dominated sport right now. They've just really been on the top table. But this Graves, I cannot take my eyes off this guy.
Oh man, what a legend.
Thank you so much, cosplayers.
That was fantastic. A little bit of Pool Party cosplay to kick off today. We have the new Pool Party skins being released as well, but we also have some League of Legends action today, Frosgren. I think that's what most people are tuning in for.
I just hope that we get to see the Pool Party skins as soon as they launch and get to see them onto the Rift. I know the LPL players have always been a big fan of using skins and abusing skins, because we don't seem to have a lot of rules about what skins are allowed in competitive play.
We can do whatever we want, the LPL Frosgren. That's what it's all about. It's been fantastic to watch, but we're going to get into more League of Legends action, so let's get into day 4 of week 8.
这次迎战2次元军团，只要他们不放出女装大招，再多的稳稳输出，我都没在怕的。
KTG 老是调侃我们女装大招，在比赛场上我们从来只用推野门的方式战斗到底。
我和 AJ 都算得上重量级上单了，体重他应该比我强，但是颜值和操作我都比他强。
在2次元的世界里，我谁都不怕，所以打卡比兽我很有信心。
比赛进行到现在，该证明我们已经都证明了。现在需要做的就是用胜利来保持我们的兴奋。
这个赛季我们已经输给过京东1次了，想要拿到我们的 double kill 可没那么容易。
正因为结果的未知，才让过程显得更有意义。没有人能界定我们的上限，别急于冲阳。
如果说之前的京东是有待开采的矿场， 那么这个赛季的京东就是开始喷发的火山，请放手来战吧。
Angry reacts only because yes, we've got our Chinese pool party cosplayers as well on the analyst desk for the Chinese broadcast, but we have to push the cosplay aside and get into the serious end of today's LPL action because it is Week 8, Day 4, and we are fresh out of cross-conference leading into Week 8, and teams are now scraping up the remaining bits and pieces of points that they can find in their own intra-conference play to advance into the playoffs of the LPL Summer Split, where they'll get a chance to fight to be one of the 3 teams that will represent the LPL at the World Championship later on this year. There have been upsets all across the LPL since cross-conference, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. New teams like the likes of JD are rising to the top, whereas BLG, after having miracle runs to the World Championship, having a good start to this year, unfortunately have not had the best of seasons so far. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matthew Fish-Stewart. Joining me is Pool Party Froskerin on the analyst desk. We're going to bring you the 2 matches that we have today. But before we go into the 2 matches that we have, we should first take a look at the matches we had on Tuesday as well as Wednesday. Because although there was no English broadcast, there was the Chinese broadcast of the LPL Pro League. So let's take a look at Tuesday's matches with Suning causing an upset against RNG, as well as Invictus Gaming picking up a 2-0 over BLG.
And it wasn't just the upset over RNG, but we will get into the back half of also Edward Gaming and WE. But business as usual when Invictus Gaming managed to take down BLG 2-0. Now that said, the 2-0 doesn't tell the whole story. Go back, watch the tape, because I feel like this series was really indicative about why BLG have been struggling. Limited champion pools. You can see that Mole right now is playing the Vel'Koz, and while we have seen the Vel'Koz globally, it's really not a champion in the LPL, and Mole was unable to connect with a lot of these skill shots and a lot of these key moments. Now, game number 2, it looked like BLG were actually going to win it until they grouped up at the worst possible moment and gave the Shy a massive cannon ultimate for Invictus Gaming then to walk towards Baron and walk away with the series.
It was the wombo combo we saw there, starting from Alistar to Java and then Cannon following up. Suning have been rising to the top, and they did so earlier in the week against RNG with an upset there.
Yeah, and Marksman Ari making an appearance in this game. Uzi is back on the roster, but unfortunately RNG are just not keeping it together. They don't really have the key synergy. Uzi does play Vayne in game number 2, and it's always going to be a crowd pleaser, but what's not a crowd pleaser is watching him attempt to 1v5, die, lose the game, and then laugh hysterically about it.
Not looking so good so far from RNG. They need to start getting it together because it is going to be playoffs shortly in the LPL, whereas for Suning, similar position to the spring split. But this split, we had not as much expectations going into their matches.
Who's that guy?
I recognize that guy. Seems like he's been on the LPL from time to time. But we didn't have too much expectations for Suning because they lost their star mid laner. They brought in a couple of new mid lanes, now settling down with Angel in the mid lane, but still showing that they can cause these upsets and try and make that playoff run in the 4th place at the moment.
Yeah, unfortunately the real loser of Suning versus RNG wasn't RNG. It was actually LGD. They had just taken down Edward Gaming, and it looked like, okay, they took down their tough opponent. Now LGD maybe make a run for the playoffs, and then Suning just smacked back, said, no, the 4th place spot is ours, and took down RNG in a massive upset.
And with those 4 games being played early in the week, we could take a look at how the LPL currently stands, because there's been upsets since playoffs. So sorry, we first take a look at Wednesday's matches. Because we had TOP getting the upset against EDG, as well as OMG taking down Team WE in a 2-1 victory.
And it's about redefining the word upset, because right now TOP and OMG are on the rise, Edward Gaming and WE are on the backward trend, particularly for EDG. EDG currently going on the longest loss streak that they've ever seen. Now,
continuing that too.
Exactly. OMG versus WE, it's been musical chairs of rosters, who's going to get it right, and OMG got it right on the day. They've now brought in another new jungler. Of course, Jaco has been with the team. Jaco has been with the team for a long time, but it's all about that mid lane jungle synergy that they're still trying to iron out, and then Chelly popping off on the Kai'Sa.
It's been a long time for us, Gurren. Something about OMG and a rotating door of junglers.
Ooh.
Not quite surprised, but Chelly has been playing fantastic. I know Raz has had his eyes on this AD carry for OMG for some time now, and it's great to see that he's finally having more consistent performances for OMG.
Yeah, big shoes to fill when you're trying to replace the likes of godly SMLZ, but Chelly may be finally growing into his position.
Yeah, and looking good for the side of OMG. They pick up the victory there against WE. As you mentioned, EDG continuing to lose. So let's take a look at how the standings have currently shaped out. Because with EDG dropping their match, TRP leapfrog to second place in their conference. This is a team that had the longest loss streak in the LPL's history.
And this is how this is going to break down. Rogue Warriors and TOP last split were in the Eastern Conference, and TOP was the last place team in the Eastern Conference. Now they move over to the Western Conference, and Rogue Warriors and TOP are the top 2 teams. So the Western Conference, it's just free points. It is too easy right now, and a lot of that stems from the collapse of Edward Gaming, who again are on the longest loss streak that the organization has ever seen right now.
And then it's a 1-game difference between EDG as well as Snake, a 2-game buffer for FPX below 4th place. Another game for that of OMG. WE struggling at 3-12.
And then over in the Eastern Conference is that tight race for playoffs, and includes one of these teams. BLG could play Blue Shell, try to upset. It's still a very hard climb because it is effectively a David versus Goliath.
Yes.
JD looking possibly at 2nd place, and BLG just trying to scrape into playoffs.
JD are currently tied with RNG in terms of points, but they have 2 games to play in hand. One of those matches is going to be today against BLG, our first match of today. It's going to be top of the table against, unfortunately, bottom of the table for BLG. BLG started the split strong. I mean, the Demacia Cup finalists, even in the games they lost very early into the split, they still looked decent there, but it just has not been able to gel together for this squad.
And like we said, we use the terminology Blue Shell. We need to really look at where BLG's domestic conference, cross conference, and then going back into domestic. So domestic conference, again, the Eastern Conference is just stacked. BLG was formerly in the Western Conference when they made their playoff run just last split. This time around, it's a completely different opponent, so you can see that they went 1-6 in their domestic conference. And cross conference, that's where they started to claw it back. But I feel like it was just them punching down on the weaker kids in the Western Conference. They did much better, but now they need to clean it up, coming it back into round robin. They've already lost to Invictus Gaming 0-2, which means they have 5 more series in hand to try to climb back up into that 4th place spot and try to make the Cinderella run. Because when they're in a best of 5, BLG are a completely different team, but right now the meta is just not suiting them.
I mean, BLG used to be IMA, and IMA had that historic run where they were able to take down Team WE in one of the final matches of the LPL to qualify for the World Championship. They're able to play in the international stage, and they're looking to try and do a similar thing with this split, but has been very shaky, as you mentioned. And we've been seeing a lot of changes in BLG's lineup. We've seen Chieftain and Mole play from time to time, as well as Athena and Mianhua being substituted in from time to time. We thought that Chieftain and Mole would be the more consistent duo, but now BLG is starting to change that jungle mid lane roster quite frequently.
And the biggest issue is the champion pool. If you looked at Chieftain's champion pool, while he was a strong performer, it's usually the Sejuanis and the Rek'Sais, and right now he's frankly just patched out. He's only played 1 game of Kindred. She's the #1 jungler right now that's running away in the LPL, and he lost on it. And when Kindred is open, BLG have to let it go through in priority for things like the Trundle, which isn't a great matchup. So I feel like they're experimenting with their mid-jungle pool, bringing back Athena, trying to get some of that veteranship status, and figure themselves on the new patch. Whereas on the other side, JD Gaming, they're super comfortable in this pocket.
Yes, they are. I mean, you talk about signature picks. Yes, Kindred's one of them, are very strong in the current meta, but we always have to look towards Yagao. Yagao's been the assist king for JD for so long, but when Zoe is left open, he picks it up and looks like a hard carry player. BLG have to deny this champion from JD.
And the thing is NALCS viewers look away because our Zoe's actually hit the skill shot. So if you think that champion is broken in that league, wait till you see it in the LPL, because we have the best Zoe players in the world, and Yagao is one of them. Now, coming into today, I thought that Zoe was going to be one of the must-play, pick or ban champions, because Mole, the other mid laner in BLG, is also a fantastic Zoe player. But with Athena starting, now I think that BLG just need to ban it. Now, Athena can play Zoe, but it's not to the same extent that Mole can, and this is a pick that you cannot allow Yagao to have. He'll just run away with the game.
I mean, he's been dubbed the sleepy Korean in the mid lane for the side of BLG, so let's see if the Zoe pick has any impact on him. Take a look at the team lineups. For the side of JD, it's going to be Zoom, Clid, Yagao, Loken, as well as Luma.
And your eyes really are focused on Yagao in that mid lane. He is the superstar carry of this team, but it's more so in his roaming capabilities as we look across to BLG.
Amazing J. Mianhua will be starting in the jungle with Athena, allying him in the mid lane, Jinjiao and Road heading towards the bottom side of the map.
And if you haven't seen BLG recently, Athena has disappeared from the roster for a very long time to the new duo of Chieftain and Mole, but BLG, they recognize that they're in crisis mode, that they're in the free fall, they need to pick up the wins now. So they've hit the eject button and they're trying to blow up the roster and put it back together.
It's almost a complete flip from last season because they brought in Chieftain and Mole as the bolster of support to push them for that playoff run. Now, they didn't do too well in playoffs, dropping in their first series, but that's what got them there. And now it seems like moving into Summer Split, in order to try and make that really late playoff run, they brought back the original duo of Athena and now bringing in Mianhua in the jungle.
The scary thing is you talked about how Athena, we nickname him the Sleeping Princess or the Sleeping Korean in that mid lane right there, because nothing really happens for him in the early game. He's been a very passive laner. He's more about just kind of surviving the lane, and it's much more about the team fight. We'll see if Athena has kind of cleaned that up, picked it up, and is able to put forth an early game to keep Yagao locked in lane, because if Yagao is unlocked to roam, JD Gaming will just run away with this. JD right now are the team to watch in the LPL. I was having this conversation with Raz just the other day, as well as Clement, and I asked, who's the strongest team in the LPL right now? And most people were saying JD or Rogue Warriors.
Ooh. Especially when Yagao works so well and has such great synergy with Clid, the jungler from the side of JD. You have to watch out for this duo. They have very unique picks that they can use to synergize together and quite often bring them out in matches like this.
Fun storyline as well, as since we have Athena on the screen, is that he's facing an old teammate right now.
Yes.
Loken and Athena, formerly of ESC Evers, from over in the Kespa Cup when they took down SKT in 2016. Got to cast that breakout season from them. So a little bit of a bittersweet romance of them coming back together. We saw them hanging out backstage on top of show. So, you know, no bad blood between those two.
From Kespa Cup now all the way towards the LPL. And I mean, it's the story for quite a few teams in the LPL. Yes, they're very competitive and they want to go up against each other. At the end of the day, they're still really good friends. We see them talking all the time backstage and communicating with one another before they even go into matches against each other.
Yeah, and we really saw that thrive at Rift Rivals last year, not this most recent one, when the LPL teams really came together to work together and defeat Korea the first time around. And a lot of those friendships have stemmed over and kind of carried over into 2018 for the LPL, where, as you're saying, you know, there's no bad blood. We have a couple of rivalries, but most of the time it's all smiles.
It is rivalries, but it's most of the time there will be smiles, unless you are Smiles, because SMLC refused to. He does not smile whatsoever. We won't be seeing him play later on today, but we'll be diving into this matchup between BLG as well as JD. I'm actually very curious about Mianhua, because he was one of the star junglers of the Master Cup. During the Master Cup, Mianhua had a fantastic performance. A lot of people were looking towards him to be one of the breakout junglers moving into the LPL summer split. We didn't see him perform that well, nor did we see him played as much. BLG were mostly focusing with Chieftain and Mole. Now that that combination has not been doing too well, it could potentially be the time for Mianhua to step up and actually shine for BLG.
Yeah, and Mianhua, when examining him, I just went back to draft phase. I saw that studying BLG's draft phases, especially against Invictus Gaming, when Kindred was left open, they were unable to grab it because it's natural that they didn't feel confident putting Chieftain on that type of champion. I think that this is a knee-jerk response to that, and I expect to see things like the Kindreds, like the Nocturnes, more of these carry-oriented junglers, the Talias, the Trundles, being picked up to try to change up the early game. And BLG must have an early game if they're going to even survive the first 15 minutes against JD Gaming. JD Gaming are a very intelligent team. They have crisp, clean fundamentals, and then they have insane skill ceilings on individual members like a Yagao.
It's just different when it's from the side of BLG. They used to be known as Iron Man. This was the late game team, the one that tried to make fights happen late in the match. When they rebranded to BLG, seems like they found their early game footing. They found some aspects of how to play early and still kept their late game identity, but recently hasn't been working out for them. Whereas JD, mid game, early game, late game, everything has been looking good for them in Summer Split. And they're one of the best team fighting teams in the LPL. If that's what BLG's identity was previously, they're going to have a tough task against JD.
And it should be noted that BLG unfortunately lost their coach between spring and summer. Coach Kesman, now the coach for RNG when he took them to MSI in the victory. And of course, like you were saying, BLG were very well known for their ability and mental fortitude to play the late game. That's exactly what we saw out of RNG at MSI.
Well, now they're trying to bring some veteranship from Amazing J in the top lane. He's been with the team for a long time. Perhaps could make up for the lack of support staff after the move from spring split to summer, and be the voice for the team carrying them into their match against JDG. But taking a look at the bans, Rakan, Zoe, as well as Aatrox being banned out by BLG, so Yagao's not going to get his signature carry champion of Zoe. Then we have Trundle, Morgana, as well as Camille being banned up by JD. They lock in Tahm Kench as their first pick.
And this is kind of a do or die moment if BLG are going to prioritize that Kindred, since it was two jungle bans leverage at a Mianhua right there, and the Trundle as well as the Camille. I do like the priority pick of Kench from JD Gaming. They are a team that prioritized traditional ADCs, which is why I also like the denial pick of the Varus. Not only is Jin Zhao also more so playing the traditional ADCs, but it's a great takeaway from Loken from one of his signature picks way back when. Although, technically with Athena, it could be mid-Varus.
It could.
To be a real throwback.
That would be interesting. But Varus has been very strong lately. He got some quality of life buffs recently. We're still on patch 8.14 as well. one of the stronger AD carries in the current meta. I know LCK were picking him up even before he got his quality of life buffs. He'll be up against Ezreal though if it is played in the bottom lane.
And frankly, my opinion is that Varus is the strongest ADC right now on the 8-14 meta. I foresee that to continue on 8-15, but we will see when the LPL decides to shift over. And when Varus comes back into the meta, it then fundamentally changes your pool down there, which is why the LPL are reaching for champions like Ezreal more often than not. Now, Ezreal can't compete with the wave clear that Varus is bringing, but if he does get access to those backline creeps, he can try to out-trade the Varus or outrange him or match that range with the Mystic Shot versus the Piercing Arrow. Well, but it's about having that trade advantage.
We'll check out the trades later on in the bottom lane, because there is a Tahm Kench, so it should be a fairly safe lane for JDG. But let's move away from the bottom side of the map, because we were talking about this pick from JD. They locked in Kindred, and even though they brought in Mianhua for the side of BLG, they went for Gragas as one of their picks. Could still be top lane, could still be support. And locking in Azir next, their final pick the first draft. But again, JD pick up Kindred, one of the stronger jungler picks in the current meta.
And frankly, like I said, it was kind of do or die or moment of truth for BLG about making this roster swap in the jungle rotation. And I feel like the fact that they grabbed the Gragas as opposed to the Kindred, already I've sold them down the river. I'm like, okay, you know, you had one chance for me. You needed to prioritize the Kindred or at least have some answer to it. Now, the Gragas with the cast can obviously disrupt a lot of what Kindred wants to do with the Lamb's Respite. So maybe that's the thinking here, but I would have preferred them just to actually have a more powerful dueling oriented jungler. Now what Gragas will bring them is early gank pressure. Level 2, level 3, he can open up access to those ganks, but if he doesn't find that window, level 4 to level 6, Kindred can just run away with this matchup or play it however she wants. If she doesn't want to try to challenge Gragas, she can sit back, she can farm up the Scuttle Crabs, grab these marks, and then turn into a hyper carry come mid-lane game.
Now it is still a flex pick, and it seems like that's what JD are thinking about now, because their first ban in the second ban phase is Lee Sin. So it seems that they still feel that Gragas is either going to be road support or potentially Amazing J taking it towards the top side of the map. We have LeBlanc as well as Ryze being banned out by BLG. They've locked in Azir, a pick that we've only seen 4 times so far in the LPL.
And it hasn't found virtually any success, about a 50% win rate right there. Azir is starting to crop back up a bit more globally. I find that there's easier access into the late game as well as the utility that his ultimate provides, especially again when you're facing across from a Kindred. Now they have the Azir wall as well as the cast so that they can disrupt that Lamb's Respite if JD Gaming try to set up a team fight on it.
Plenty of ways to stop the initial compositions that JD had picked up, but plenty of protection from the safety of the AD carry to Lamb's Respite, to even Tahm Kench protecting somebody from the side of JD. However, Pyke has been locked in as the supportive choice for BLG. That means Amazing J or Mianhua will get their final pick as a counter pick here. Still waiting to see where Gragas will go for BLG's side of the map. Taliyah was the final ban that came out from JD, so targeting another jungler, or potentially a support if Rogue was thinking about picking it up before he locked in Pyke.
I feel like that's kind of the nail on the head there, Fish, is that they forced Road into grabbing hold of the Pyke since he doesn't have access to any other junglers to take the Gragas into the support position. Because more often than not, we do see Gragas being funneled into support rather than the top lane. Though we have seen both, as this is a very JD Gaming composition. So
far, because Galio's been locked in for Yagao. Doesn't have his carry champion of Zoe, so moving back towards a more supportive pick.
Now, I do have problems with this composition, especially now that the Gangplank has been locked in, and that there's not a lot of team fight lockdown. There's not virtually any hard C outside of a flash taunt or the Gangplank ultimate being used as a slow for JD Gaming to force fights.
Top of that, if they're going to be using that area of effect with Gangplank ultimate, Galio throwing down from the sky, and Lamb's Respite, we already mentioned it. There is an Azir, there is a Gragas that can disrupt it. Final pick from BLG is going to be their jungler of choice. Xinjiang locked in, which means we do see Amazing J flex the Gragas, and they're going to be using the champion in the top lane.
Why put the Gragas up into the top lane when you have access to so many other things? AJ has never been known as a phenomenal Gragas player. I would much prefer him on something like a Mundo, but...
Could it be just to try and go for the dueling potential against Kindred? Because if it wasn't going to do well in this matchup, especially if he doesn't get the level 2 or level 4 ganks going down, perhaps Xinjiang could try and take it to Clid in the jungle.
But if you're having to have, like, you then lose the power of a flex pick if you're forced to flex it into not great matchups. Like Gragas versus Gangplank, that's going to be fine, but it doesn't outright smash, you know what I mean? When there was access to things like Gnar, like Kennen, like Ornn, like Mundo, like you know, the list goes on and on and on, and we ended up at Gragas. Now Gragas brings great utility, but if you're playing mind games with the flex pick because you're trying to carve something else out or a better matchup out on your map, I just feel like BLG missed the execution.
Still, champion picks aside, they've brought in Mianhua as their jungler of choice, and he has to pull out some aggression today because BLG needs some form of an early game to take it to JD. Perhaps picking up the Xin Zhao, being more aggressive, could be BLG's response to finding that early game and allowing him to be that bit more aggressive so they have a firm footing into the match from the very get-go.
But then you just look at what lanes he's going to be aggressive with. Now he does have access to multiple ganking lanes as well as pushing lanes for himself, but I feel like it's really this Pyke and this Varus lane that he wants to get involved with. So I expect to see kind of some stereotypical passive farming, at least level 1 through 4, and then once Pyke and Varus have a bit more access to all of their abilities for poke, wave control, and mostly catch, that's when Xin Zhao really needs to start looking bottom and seeing if he can find not only ganks, but preferably counter ganks to get that snowballed.
Still a very tricky lane to go for a gank against because it is an Ezreal and a Tahm Kench. It's very safe, and when level 6 ticks over for the solo laners, you've got a Galio that's not too far away as well.
And that was the big thing. So again, it's these very small windows that BLG have to act in their composition before level 6, before access to that Galio ultimate, that GP ultimate that you're talking about, where you can then start layering everything down and say, okay, if you want to gank the Varus Pyke, you know, good luck, because we do have that defensive bottom lane as well as these ultimates that can just cause so much chaos bot lane.
So difficult for JD to try and start fights in this matchup for the side of BLG. They have very short and interesting windows for them to actually capitalize on their composition. But let's get on to Summoner's Rift for the first match. JD taking on BLG.
Crowd in full force today in Shanghai.
And of course, JD's manager is here once again to lend a helping hand to the chants. And without fail, he is here to cheer on JD.
Ah, here we go. BLG Road. It's his 200th game in the LPL. Happy birthday, Road. It's not actually his birthday, but his 200th game birthday.
Happy 200 game birthday, Road.
Happy 200
That's a lot of games for Oscar.
Now, we call Road, I believe Rusty gave him this nickname, the Wanderer. Now, if you've never seen Jin Zhao and Road play, it's mostly Jin Zhao going 1v2, which is why a champion like Pyke is perfect for Road because of his roaming capabilities. Road is a win more style of support, and he's pretty indicative of how BLG are doing if you just press tab and see how Road's scoreline is doing. If he's sitting probably 4-0, chances are BLG are going to smash that game. But he's either 4-0 or he's 0-9. It's feast or famine for Road.
Well, he's got a good champion to try and find the feast potential with Pyke, but then again, also a champion that can fall behind rather easy. So we move towards the mid lane to start this matchup. Yes, both junglers started at their red buff, now moving straight buff to buff, picking up their blue buff next. But Azir, it's a champion we haven't seen too much. Yes, becoming more popular globally, but hasn't worked out too well in the LPL. Has a 50% win rate and only picked 4 times so far, so this will be the 5th match.
Because we like to team fight, we like to stack a lot of CC on our compositions, and frankly, our Azir players and the execution on this champion have left much to be desired. Now you can see why Athena picked it up into this matchup. He already has the early shove potential, and so hopefully he can maintain that. He's got the cleanse, so obviously respecting the fact that Kindred could try to make a very early gank onto the mid lane with a flash taunt from Galio, provide him safety from that, so he can push up in the lane and then just try to chip away and find an EXP advantage against Yagao or control that lane a bit more.
Well, he's going for a gank at the top side of the map. Amazing J trying to run in between Brush. Good barrel coming out. Body slam lands, but he's going to take quite a bit of damage from Clid. Flash forward. They want to go for the kill. One more attack should be enough. And first blood picked up by Clid.
Throw up the emotes. He's got the penguin. He doesn't care. And now Kindred is on the board. And like I said, it's do or die for BLG. They had the opportunity to pick up the Varus and the Kindred. They gave it away for taking the Gragas flex pick. And it's the Gragas flex pick that dies first.
Kindred's now going to do a little bit of counter jungling. Unfortunately for Clid, he had Mianhua marked, and the first Scuttle Crab mark was on the bottom side of the map. So yes, it's first blood, it's a very early kill, and they burned a teleport for Amazing J, but no marks yet for Kindred so far. We'll be starving in that aspect for a little bit. We might see them clash here. Clid is level 4. Mianhua is level 3. Jumps over the wall. Doesn't seem just yet, but we'll go for a fight. Mianhua's going to dash forward, try and lock Clid down, taking quite a bit of damage here. Now dashing away. A few more attacks. Mianhua forced to flash away. Red buff ticking, not going to be enough. Azir collapses first, but Galio is here as well. Taunt coming through, flash forward to secure it. Slams the ground, Yagao gets a second kill for JDG.
And should be noted that Clid still has his flash available, so he would be able to walk out of that.
And flashes away to make sure Emperor of Shurima can't take him down. Meanwhile, Yagao still wants to try and take on Athena. Clid still getting good damage over the wall. Amazing J taking some return from Gangplank, and JD work together as a team, and they invade BLG's side of the map.
And great cross-map communication from JD Gaming to recognize that Clid didn't need to burn the flash offensively, that he could hold it defensively because the roam and rotation came from Yagao to pick up the kill on Xin Zhao. So beautifully executed from a very young and very green squad in JD Gaming, and that's why they're starting to climb up the standings.
And very good start for them, as you mentioned, but BLG, we said they need to have some form of an early game, and we haven't seen that just yet. It's all been about JDG being proactive, and again, it's with this Kindred pick, which BLG have refused to pick up when it's open.
And here's the thing, now that they have full control over the early game, because Kindred is now sitting 1-0-1, they can just sit back and let their laners play safe. They have a Gangplank, they have a Tahm Kench Ezreal. Yeah, Galio doesn't have access to his teleport or his flash, but he also just has great wave clear and he's a very tanky champion. At this point, they can just control space for Clid, allow him to continue to hard farm, whereas pressure is on for BLG. They do have scaling options in the likes of the Azir and the Varus, but you're still looking across from, you know, maybe a double tier from an Ezreal so he can hyperscale, as well as a Gangplank.
Okay, when we talked about BLG's windows to try and attack, it seems like the first one is now gone. Where do they wait for next? What is that very narrow window of opportunity where they can actually fight back against JD?
I feel like it's all about Jin Zhao and making sure that, because Varus can get item break points a little bit before Ezreal, pending on what Loken's build on Ezreal is going to be. Now, usually when it's Ezreal versus Varus, we've seen them rush for the Sheen first, because taking control of that lane is about taking control of the trades. You can't match Varus's wave push, so either you allow yourself to get shoved in, or you make the aggressive stance to buy a Sheen first, try to get on the back of those caster creeps, and try to out-trade with the Sheen.
So far in the bottom lane, though, it's just been a farm fest between the two. You can see lots of potions being picked up by Loken from not only his biscuits, but also his Kleptomancer, giving him one of those half potions. Again, Clid tried to make his gank towards top side of the map, but a good read came out from Amazing J. He took the time to go back to base, starving at the moment. There's a Sheen being picked up by Zoom on Gangplank, but Amazing J just sitting on a Doran's ring, a Dark Seal, as well as a Cloth Armor and Boots. So bits and pieces to try and survive the lane. Quite scary that Gangplank is not only 20 CS ahead, but it's ahead of a tank early in the match as well.
Yeah, and it's great security and a lot of wards have been placed up there to make sure that GP can continue to be forward as mid.
Skirmish in the mid lane. Mid laners as well as junglers are here. Gangplank throws out the ultimate for assist as Mianhua decides to go back in, and that's an easy kill for Clid. He gets a stack for it as well.
And it's just devastating. It's not just Clid, but it's also Zoom now. 0-0-2, had access to the Sheen, had access to the ultimate, and again, great cross-map communication from JD Gaming. And you can see that BLG just aren't thinking about that. No one is communicating, hey, Gangplank's got ultimate, we probably shouldn't try to force something into the mid lane because it's 3 versus 2.
Picks up a red buff as well. We can take a look at that again because it was Mianhua waiting for some time here, a level behind Kindred. Shows early, but still decides to jump in for the fight.
Crazy interaction right there to make sure that Yagao doesn't travel the full distance of the wall, and then it's Mianhua who is left out to dry on the Xin Zhao. And we were talking about those windows that BLG had, very narrow to try to make an impact in the early game or the lane phase. They've completely closed. At this point, BLG just need to stop the bleeding and start farming up for either a mid-game fight around the Varus or hyper late game.
And I know you talked about that Varus a lot, but Loken has had enough gold to pick up a tier as well as a Sheen. So that early game advantage of having the Sheen and not stacking up the tier as fast as possible, that's out the window now. He's got both.
And I have to look at BLG's jungler right now. You know, normally you want to try to gank that lane early to try to force the Ezreal back so he doesn't get to sit in lane and make sure that he can farm both the tier and the Sheen. As Mianhua, there's no reason to be invading right now. I understand you're trying to get your table scraps, but JD Gaming have a perfect read on the situation.
Pushed out of his jungle, still level 5 on Xin Zhao. Tried to take red buff as he mentioned, but both Lu Mao as well as Clid collapse. deny him from moving into the jungle any further forward. So it seems like late game is probably where we're going to go now for BLG if they don't have any more windows to strike.
But if they can survive that, right now every single lane is losing, either in itemization or just the fact that they cannot lane, and then the jungler is collapsing around them. As you can see, now Lumao is starting to invade, place down vision, and opening things up like an Infernal Dragon. So from bad to worse for BLG, their lane's all lost. Now they have to wait on scaling, which JD Gaming can match with their composition, and it's double Infernal.
Top of that, I mean, you said they can match them with late game. Yes, double Infernal adds insult to injury, especially since JD controls the map right now. But it's a Kindred late game with a Gangplank late game who's already ahead of his counterpart. It really feels like BLG are just relying on the fact that, yes, JD don't have any reliable way to start fights besides a flash taunt. So maybe that's their avenue to try and pick apart the team. But those narrow windows for them to strike and the narrow opportunities in this match are now next to none.
And there is opportunity because JD's composition will also struggle slightly to siege. When they approach towers, they do have the poke between Gangplank barrels as well as the Ezreal. But when they approach towers, you know, you're approaching against very long-range CC ultimates like the Azir, like the Varus, like the Gragas cast. So maybe BLG can exploit some weaknesses if JD don't set up correctly when they do try to snowball outside of the lane phase. Because again, this composition still is rather difficult to execute versus what JD Gaming normally like to run, which is abundance of CC, abundance of team fighting ability. 3
stacks of Kindred as well, so we will see the increased, or the first bit of increased range for the champion. Gives him that little bit more safety,
a little bit more siege assistance as well.
Especially if he goes towards rapid fire kind of, right? Then he has longer range than a Caitlyn when that's active.
Yep.
Gives him that bit more siege potential. It's not much, but it's what JD really need at the moment. And still hunting down Minhwa, stealing away Raptor Camp. It's 71 CS to 45 in the jungle.
It's not great, Fish.
No.
It's devastating, and JD Gaming, they really need the Rift Child because, again, of how their composition wants to siege into BLG's comp. And you can see that BLG are already trying to break enemy lines. They've unlocked Road on this Pyke. He's got the mobility boots. He says, okay, you know, we need to break this open. We need to start causing some chaos because if we just sit in our lanes, we're just going to continue to lose the game faster. So Road is on the hunt, but I don't know if that's enough for BLG to turn the tides of a pretty disastrous early game.
But he is 0-0-0, so we haven't seen anything from Road. He hasn't a feast or the famine. He could potentially pop up and start to feast. But I haven't seen anything yet as Jin Zhao flashes forward to try and start a fight. Road tries to come in for the stun, but Lumao will simply flash away. Unexpected fight started, but JD's bottom lane is just too safe.
But they're trying to capitalize on it. You can see that Athena and Minhwan are attempting to rotate down bottom, and in response, JD Gaming have unleashed the Rift Herald up onto the top side. It'll push this tower down pretty much in one charge, get a good second charge on top tower, and BLG now need to make a decision. Do we try to save top tower, or do we all in on bottom? And because Jin Zhao is backing, I think that they're just indecisive and going to lose both opportunities.
Mason G does get up here in time, does get the eye as well, so the charge isn't as devastating, but still chunking away about half the hit points of the top lane in the turret.
They're going to gank bottom again. Look at where Road is. But he's slightly mistimed with Jin Zhao as well as Minhwa. BLG missing windows by about 10 seconds.
And what's sad is they already have such narrow windows to strike against JD, so missing it even by 10 seconds is already 10 seconds too late. They don't have the comfort of, you know, making these plays as and when they want to. That's JD's position at the moment.
But it's almost inexcusable that Jin Zhao and Road wouldn't be on the same pace for about how to use the Varus's teleport or his back timing appropriately for Pyke to look for a very deep reach around gank in the bottom lane. We know that the flash was burned on the Tahm Kench, as well as now using the spellbook, so having access to the cleanse and the exhaust. So there was an opportunity to try to kind of that same cheeky Varus ultimate into a Pyke, but they're desynced and don't get to play.
So
that's not how that works.
That's how it works. There you go. Got it the second time around soon. But we've seen the first 13 minutes of Minhwa and Athena working together so far. Minhwa has been shut down in the jungle because there's 2 levels ahead. Large CS lead as well. Even if BLG can turn it around in the late game, and they can come back and pick up a win here, has the early game from Mianhua and Athena critically failed? Because that's what we're looking towards for BLG, right? If they're going to bring in their substitute mid laner and jungler, it has to impact the early game, which we haven't seen so far.
Oh, absolutely. And the itemization differences between both these teams is really where the critical failure is. You know, that's a Blade of the Rune King that's completed on Varus, which means, yeah, now Jin Zhao can pretty much hold the lane. He's got the sustain here, so he's okay. But you look at Azir's itemization comparatively to, like, Gangplank's itemization. You have a GP whose tower went down first. He got a pretty much fairly early, if not perfectly on time, Trinity Force, and you have the Infernal spawning in 1:13. So GP doesn't have to walk down there. He's got a Trinity on top of having the Cannon Barrage ultimate. This should be free for JD Gaming, and there's no items that BLG have to compete with that.
Play into the bottom lane though, trying to get behind Jin Zhao, gets clipped by the Ezreal ultimate, he's got nowhere to run. Tries to stand and deliver, not going to be enough. JD collapse on the bottom lane and find another pick for themselves.
And there's just no response, so it's probably going to be tower bottom as well as massive damage on top tower as wave after wave is being forced in by Zoom on AJ.
This is why a couple of analysts think that JD could potentially be one of the best teams in the LPL right now. I know Clement said it on the desk once, came back to bite him as they lost that match where he did say it, but they're just playing very clean.
I'm actually in agreement. I think right this second, this day, JD Gaming are the best team in the LPL. Now that said, the LPL does turn into a different animal come playoffs.
True.
We expect teams like RNG, like Invictus Gaming to step up into that playoff form, whereas JD Gaming have never really proven that they have that sixth gear that other veteran squads have.
They showed they had the sixth gear during regular season and spring split, where they caused the upset and went to playoffs over Suning. During playoffs themselves, they couldn't go one step further, which we're hoping now that they haven't had to go into sixth gear during regular split, they can in playoffs itself. Working together so far in this split. It's not how that works, Clid. But it's a 5,500 goal lead for JD. Relatively slow game, but it hasn't had to be fast paced for JD. They've been getting the incremental advantages, and every play they've made has just been working out for them.
I mean, it's felt really controlled and slow pace, and it's only 4-0 kills in the LPL, but if you look at that gold difference, that is pretty massive.
Another fight taking place in the bottom lane. Jin Zhao has no flash, collapsed upon, and an easy pick for JD once again. Right as Infernal Dragon spawn too.
It's kind of like, why are you there? He had ample vision because JD Gaming had just cleared out all of BLG's vision, so they knew that they were in that bottom side of the river, and he just walked up into certain death.
So I really want to talk about Kindred here, because it has been a big impact on the early game. And again, we identified that BLG, they're not going to pick it up. They brought in Mianhua. We said maybe this is the time where he picks up the champion. No, they don't. They go towards Gragas early, then flex it to top lane and pick up Xin Zhao. Now that BLG have shown that neither Mianhua or Chieftain are really going to go towards this Kindred pick, do they just simply have to ban it away now? Get rid of the champion, just ban it out and make it so that JD can't play it.
I feel like a lot of LPL teams have the confidence, or I'm going to call it arrogance at this point, that they can play around the Kindred, have access to things like the Azir ultimate, like the Cask, that maybe they can disrupt what she's going to do. But you need to be able to survive the early game then and not let her get farmed up, find these key items, and then, you know, not even have her rely her power be on the Lamb's Respite. Right now, Clit's just powerful because he hits like a truck. So, yeah, I fundamentally think BLG failed in draft phase, but we kind of expect that out of, I believe, the 6th place team in the Eastern Conference versus the 3rd to 2nd place team in the Eastern Conference. This was supposed to be a very one-sided affair, and what's interesting here is now we need to put the magnifying glass over JD Gaming and really judge them about how they dissect and dismantle BLG. And so far, it's in a very calculated, controlling, pretty terrifying way.
Yes, because often we've seen teams like RNG and IG do just this, but faltered in their execution. They look strong, and they look like the better team on the day, but would make mistakes where the other team could capitalize. And you think, okay, if that other team was a top-tier team like RNG or EDG at the time, potentially would not have been enough for IG to close out matches. Now we tune into JD. If they make mistakes against BLG, that's still not good for them.
And here is a window where JD Gaming will be judged, and it's how they figure out the Rubik's Cube to crack this mid lane tower against the likes of Nazir. Again, this composition doesn't have a lot of hard CC. They're going to be really reliant on their poke to try to whittle down Athena off this structure. It is good that he doesn't have access to a blue buff, but BLG do have a moment here where they can attempt to stall out the game if they can keep Azir healthy and keep this mid lane clear.
So we see the poke being thrown out by Loken. He's only hit a single Mystic shot on Athena, but when he doesn't have the Arcane Shift available. Whenever one of those Emperors gets placed down, immediately backing off. Now everyone collapsing on towards the turret. Gangplank ultimate gets thrown out as well.
This is the mistake. Here comes Yagao. He's literally behind them.
Mianhua's going for that fight. Yagao going in with the ultimate instead, trying to save Clid. He takes some damage on the last turret shot as well. Mid lane turret under some pressure. JD gets some good poke damage. They don't commit for a fight, but that turret is a couple of auto attacks away from falling.
Now, it didn't look like disaster for JD, and the tower will eventually fall, so good job. But I'm going to say it was probably a 6 out of 10 for execution. I don't think Yagao needed to use his Galio ultimate there. I think it would have been better if they had used the Lamb's Respite, as well as a flash taunt initiation from Galio to be able to dive the tower and really snowball and break this game open.
Yeah, almost feels like they just wanted to hold on to certain things there and not force a fight or throw away a lead, but it worked at the end of the day. Might not be what we wanted, but they still get the mid lane out to turret. Hold on to a massive gold lead at that. 7,000 gold ahead of BLG just 19 minutes into the match with 2 Infernal Dragons. If JDG keep this up, that's going to be a perfect game for them.
And it looks like it should be a perfect game. Jin Zhao is the only person who has any sort of tower pressure, and he cannot be on his own in these side lanes because Galio will have kill pressure on him. I mean, Jin Zhao could attempt to outplay, does have access to the Bork, but he's sitting on a lot of gold and needs to buy a second item before he's safe to be in extended lanes.
There's a fight in
speaking
the
of which,
bottom lane where Clid's going to flash forward, gets knocked back by Mason J's ultimate, and they collapse one spawn to the bottom lane. Another stack for Clid, and another pick for JDG.
And the most obvious difference between these teams is simply how they're keeping track of players moving across the map. It was bad in lane phase for BLG, and now it's gotten worse now that we've broken out of lane phase, and that communication needs to be so much crisper. And again, they don't really have an excuse. Yes, this is a newer jungler, but otherwise it's all veterans.
They're trying to find a pick onto Zoom, and even though Jin Zhao and Road were here, they get some damage on the Gangplank, but it doesn't mean anything. They can't commit to these fights. 204 CS Zoom at the moment, 20 CS ahead of Amazing J. Trinity Force complete, Steris Gauge complete as well. Everyone from the side of JD has those item power spikes. All the outer turrets are taken down. Baron has spawned. Ocean Dragon, the third elemental, will be up in about a minute. They can just make their way towards these inner turrets. It's really the last hope for BLG now.
But it's very hard to crack the inner towers. You're looking at JD Gaming trying to bait BLG into an area where they can poke at them, where they can fight them, and there's a bit more freedom. So either the use of the Abyssal Voyage, or how they're going to set up Baron as well as an Ocean. BLG shouldn't fight over the Ocean, so it should really be about the Baron. Issue is that the Baron's still going to be relatively difficult to take at this point in the game, this early on, especially against an Azir Varus combo. So I still think that there's a little bit of hope for BLG. They need a massive miracle team fight. And again, it comes down to how JD Gaming are going to set up their preparation around these objectives to continue to break open the game outside of, let's just farm massive power spikes, have, you know, 1.5, 2 items over our opponent, and then force towers.
Well, if you're looking for a miracle, BLG are one of the teams that can provide that miracle. We've seen it before. Doesn't happen often, but more often than not for BLG.
I have a feeling JD Gaming want to set up a trap on the back of this Baron pit, and then because they'll have access to flash on Yagao now, put the Galio in a brush, or have him flank with his ultimate and then hit the taunt.
You also have Lumel being able to assist with that. You can potentially bring one person into the back lines, and then Yagao can follow up. So they have ways to set the trap around the red side of BLG's jungle, which is just behind the Baron pit, and could potentially be the next objective that JDG look towards. Right now, Clid is trying to take away the free Ocean Dragon. As you said earlier, BLG are not going to contest for this minor objective at this point. But again, just makes JD stronger and stronger. 4th Elemental is going to be another Ocean Dragon.
Double Ocean, double Infernal. Still terrifying. And JD Gaming, they're deciding that they don't even have to force the monster objective, that they can continue to just split the map around BLG and then use the advantage of the Abyssal Voyage as well as the Galio ultimate mobility to try to catch out BLG overextended in a lane phase or just continue to whittle them down underneath the towers. Pressure and onus is on BLG about how to break this.
I mean, even for the side of JD, even if they just play this way, chip at turrets, don't force anything, don't go for fights. Seems like BLG are going to try and force against Zoom. Amazing J is here, Athena's here as well. Steris Gauge going to get popped, and Clid jumps over to make sure Zoom stays safe. Tahm Kench, even as you're joining the fight, Yagao close by in case anything went south. And it was a good play coming out from BLG, looking for the fight, but again, JD just walk away. They're not even forced to flash away from the fight.
But there's still a lot of respect that BLG are given. Athena could have flashed or attempted to really try to force that fight, but he almost just let the Gangplank walk away. I understand that it's still a scary situation because, you know, Kindred's involved, but BLG are just passively watching themselves lose this game. You need to do something, and this is why they moved away from Athena in the first place. He is not a proactive, bloodthirsty mid laner. He'll play passive. You set up the dominoes, he knocks them down, but he's not going to be that guy that flashes forward, that tries to make the Azir sec and find a pick in a side lane.
Which makes sense for the way this game has played out. It's been top side, Amaze J and Mianhua that were picked on early, then it rotated to Jinja and Road. Athena's 0-0-0. He's keeping up with CS against Yagao, but that's it.
And it's now even 23 minutes in that the 10k gold advantage has been eclipsed. And JD Gaming, it was just systematic. They took advantage in the early game. They've walked all over BLG in the mid game. And even on a composition that is relatively rough to execute on, it just looks too easy.
We're starting to see the poke come into effect for Loken. Iceborne Gauntlet as well as the double tier. So he's got the Mirror Mana complete. Still stacking the Seraph Embrace, and you get that upgraded into the second item. So lots of poke coming out for Ezreal. With Clid having access to the entire side of BLG's jungle, that's all he's farming. Trying to get as many stacks in Kindred as possible. Oh, Jijel not going to be knocked back here. Lumao even get knocked into the team, but Mianhua's the one that's taking way too much damage. Doesn't get taken down, instead stopwatch being used by Lumao. Logan's trying to fight this one out. Clid picks up that first kill. Galio trying to keep Kindred alive. And although messy team fight for JDG, they still get the single pick and force BLG to retreat.
And again, not just the cross-map communication, but the team fighting communication. Clid held on to the ultimate, and they made sure that, okay, Tahm Kench has the Grey health, Tahm Kench has his flash, Tahm Kench has Devour, the Galio ult can come through. You know, there was never a moment where people are flashing chaotically while the Lamb's Respite is down, while the Galio protection is coming down. It's all used independently and chained together to make sure that everyone stays healthy, stays alive, and allows themselves the back half of that siege to crack mid lane tower.
It's just been systematically tearing apart BLG limb by limb. I mean, bottom lane inner turret's now gone, mid lane inner turret's gone. JD are continuing to increase this gold lead, still sitting at 10,000, but it's 5 turrets to none, 7 kills to none. 3 elemental dragons with Ocean Dragon coming up next as well.
And there's now enough items and power in the bank that if JD Gaming are left alone with the Baron for even the briefest of seconds, it will fall. So desperation for BLG, they know that they have to hold kind of that one last spot on the map, and they have an Azir. So Azir's ability to hold red side Raptor ramp is very, very strong, but if Athena doesn't play perfectly, BLG's hopes are gone.
So far, he hasn't really been the problem, but not the solution either for BLG. 0-0-0. Keeping up in CS against Yagao, but not making those plays we need from him to find a way back to the match for BLG. Now, JD are going to try to stand up around this Baron. Teleport is available for one of their 3 players packing the Summoner spell. It's going to be Zoom on his Gangplank. As Road, the one that's in trouble, wants to jump over the wall towards Raptor Camp. Took quite a bit of poke damage from Lumao as well as Loken.
Xin Zhao that they're hunting for, of course, though. JD Gaming, the bane of their existence used to be that Baron buff, and they had it time and time again stolen from them.
Stolen by a Braum Q at one point from EDG.
They used to be the Dignitas of the LPL. Since climbing to the top, they've certainly cleaned up their execution around this monster objective.
Which is crazy, because we said that they would be a top team if they cleaned up their Baron play. They did, and now they're one of the best.
I mean, the thing is they remind me of the Afrika Freaks in a sense of that the Afrika Freaks are a very strong fundamental team, is what they've always been praised for over in the LCK, that you can tell that there's a lot of discipline and a lot of drilling about, okay, in this situation we need to do X, and you can see that type of situation and that type of coaching on JD Gaming. Should be noted that JD's coach was Coach Ohm, brand new. They changed up the coaching staff from Team WE, so Coach Ohm went to the World semi-finals with Team WE, is now standing behind JD Gaming, and what a reversal and revival of this squad from spring to summer.
Toll took, and now JD are making that big play. There goes Galio, the only form of hard engage that we see from JDG. Flashes into the backlines, gets the taunt. Jinjiao and Athena both live with next to no health. That should have been 2 picks to them. But even after botching the team fight, they go straight towards Baron.
But look at the setup to make sure that they don't force all of the members. It's just the Kindred right now alongside Tahm Kench as the tank on the Baron, while the rest of them are trying to zone them off and find those crucial picks. I think Yagao needs to get into the pit though. No, Logan's just going to help out with DPS.
Logan goes in now, Yagao's the target, but inside 4 members of the team gets a 4-man taunt, eventually falls, so no perfect game, but Baron's been picked up. JD trying to protect Zoom, gets a good layers respite at the last second, trying to retreat away from BLG. Lumao eats him up, trying to get him back to safety. Pyke's going to flip him over to the rest of the squad. Eats an orange, but he's not caged. And Zhao gets that kill. BLG do fight back, but it's JD that pick up the Baron.
It was best case scenario for BLG. They finally execute on a play and get something for it, but like you said, JD Gaming, they sacrificed the perfect game. They sacrificed a lot of their Baron buffs, but they now have access to the Baron, which helps this composition siege against BLG's comp so much more effectively.
They don't lose any of the gold lead they had. In fact, they add on to it. They're now 12,000 gold ahead of BLG.
They're gonna get 5 dragons.
4 elementals already picked up, and Infernal's the next one to spawn. 5 dragons could be JD's pick, but here was the fight again. Yagao got collapsed upon and taken down quite quickly. And Road was helping out this team, flipped back a few members. Too little, too late.
I feel like the real failure here was Zoom. There was no reason that he needed to step up. He could have just placed barrels, made sure that he was zoning, and then it would have meant that JD Gaming didn't have to sacrifice so many of their Baron buffs in trying to disengage from the pit. So again, we need to put the magnifying glass, we need to hold JD Gaming to a higher standard since they are now a top team in the LPL. Where was the mistake in that execution? Yes, you got the Baron, but you could have done it better, and I think that's when the coach points at Zoom, why are you here? Why not just place the barrels on the ramp, dissuade them from walking through that damage, and then disengage with the rest of your team so they don't need to go out of position to save you.
Especially when the setup for that Baron player was beautiful. They made sure they controlled red side of the jungle, moving from bottom lane push to getting mid lane pushing to controlling with wards inside of the red side of the jungle, then sieging top side. Even with a big play coming up from Yagao, flashing forward with the taunt, trying to lock down multiple members. Almost got 2 kills as well. Realizing they don't have to commit to the dive, they don't have to commit to the kills, they can back off for Baron, playing that dance very beautifully, and just the final bits of execution not coming through. So really good from JD. We are criticizing them quite heavily because they are one of the top teams. Side of BLG, that was their first opportunity to really fight back. It's all been about JD controlling this match so far, and now it's almost too little too late.
I mean, the only crowning achievement for BLG this match is that they didn't get perfect game, but they haven't slowed anything down. Like you said, they didn't make any ground on that gold discrepancy between the teams. Checking in on itemization, it was the double tier Ezreal coming out, so Logan making sure that he hyper scales into late game, and because they're so far ahead of the clock, that's right now. This Ezreal is hitting like a truck.
Every Q that hits feels like Nidalee back from Season 2 hitting with one of her spear shots. Clid is split pushing on the side of the bat, flashes away from HJ's ultimate. Might even get a kill here, almost. The burn is ticking. Clid's able to take it down. 2v1 against Mianhua, as well as Amazing J. Split pushing on Kindred. We already saw how far ahead he got in the early game. Now just hitting it home. Top lane inhibitor is down. JD collapsed towards bottom side of the map.
This should be it. JD Gaming, they don't have the hard CC, so if BLG ever step out, JD Gaming will have no problem matching that. They'll pull the trigger immediately on the Galio ultimate, and they will try to end it on this push if BLG don't play defensively.
This has been a disaster for BLG so far. They haven't even been able to put up a fight when JD collapsed towards these objectives, sacrificing objective after objective. Baron buff just wore out for JD, but now they're going to have double super minions in each lane collapsing.
That's not the one you want.
Gets locked down, has a QSS to keep him alive, but Clid moving towards the fountain of the map. Dashing out with his Q, making sure that Wolf is there to get him the reset, slowly chipping away at the inhibitor turret, sorry, the Nexus turrets. BLG just, they're bleeding out here, Frosker.
Yeah, and I like the fact that JD Gaming are playing with a high reward, low risk type of style. The Baron buff has fallen off, but there's just nothing on the map left for BLG to grab. So JD Gaming, they're sitting on a ton of global gold. They just took all of those structures. They can go back, they can be pretty much all at their core itemization. They're so far ahead of the clock, but they know, okay, if BLG do step forward, if they do mess up, we end the game here and now, and this doesn't have to go to, you know, 5 dragons or a second Baron.
It could, but with 3 minutes of double super minions left.
That's a teleport. That's a dead Zen.
2v1, let's go. Only Yakao going for this fight. Another teleport coming out from Zoom. Yakao still fast, gets the single taunt on towards Mianhua the jungler. Loken shows up as well. Yakao trying to keep them occupied. Knocks 2 members back to team. This is a 3-on-5 in favor of BLG, but it doesn't matter. Road will get the first kill, but a good taunt comes out from Yakao, locking down the last 2 members. Again, a couple living with sliver of health. Zoom now hunting them down, throws out the barrel, easy kill picked up by JDG. And it's been a shellacking of a performance for JD. Double super minions on each lane pushing for the win.
They know that they're strong, they can smell it, blood in the water, and JD Gaming should close out the game.
It's the final stand. Mianhua's going to fall. Athena shortly after. Only Jin Zhao left alive, and he's forced towards his fountain. Every single structure in the side of BLG's base falls, and game 1 goes to Jingdong Gaming.
And this is why JD Gaming are one of our top teams, if not the best performing team in the LPL. That just frankly looked way too easy. Now, when you watch the likes of Invictus Gaming, of RNG, of EDG, these other top teams, they're starting to make mistakes in their setup. They're starting to get a little bit too overzealous, a little bit too arrogant, maybe extending themselves and then be punished by these lower tier teams. But JD Gaming just consistently cover their flanks. They're very disciplined in everything they do, and they have the individual talent to match those other top teams, and that's why they're terrifying.
I mean, discipline summed up this match, right? BLG, they brought in Mianhua as well as Athena. They had to have some form of an early game. JD didn't care. They had their own early game strategy and executed it way better than BLG could.
And it all comes back to draft phase as we take a look at some of these damage graphs. Woo. That is
It's quite even on the side of JD. Jin Zhao trying to do what he can for the side of BLG in that match, but they could never really find a firm footing to actually have an even fight. Baron buff was the closest opportunity they had, but they were already 12,000 gold behind.
And I have to go back to the draft phase. I think that this was the big reason why BLG fumbled there. If you're going to make the substitution of changing out your jungler because Chieftain doesn't play things like the Kindred, he can't play these carry junglers, and then you just get banned out and you're forced into the flex pick of the Gragas in second rotation, you could have taken Varus Kindred right there. I think that was the optimal drafting strategy. I don't like what they did with the Gragas pick, and don't get me wrong, like Gragas globally, you can do things with it. I understand where it can find holes in this composition, where it can start to snowball, but BLG are not Gragas players. It doesn't work in the top lane for them. I don't trust Road for it onto the support, so as a flex pick, it doesn't make sense for BLG as a team.
I mean, even as a pick to counter the composition or to counter Kindred, in the case of JDG, it didn't work because they never had an opportunity to group up and actually fight, and we couldn't see the interactions between the likes of Azir, between the likes of Gragas and even Varus in team fights, because they couldn't even team fight. JD just tore them apart and made sure that there was no opportunity for BLG to punish their weakness in their composition.
And again, the issue is you talk about kind of like the weaknesses in the composition. BLG don't have great bridging points of power. You know, they have kind of these very short windows in the lane phase where they can try to get their composition going, and then if those windows close, you then maybe have some item break points on Varus that you can try to play around, and then hyper late game around the wave clear that Varus and Azir can provide, and then late game fighting front to back with those two champions is really cool. On the other side, JD Gaming have bridging points of power at every single point in the game. You know, Kindred can take full control over the early game, your level 6 power spike with the Galio and the Gangplank ultimates, especially when you play around bottom, Ezreal's itemization when he gets that sheen in the lane phase, and then he can go into the double tier so he can also hyperscale. I just think that while I didn't like that JD's Gaming didn't have a lot of hard CC, at least at every point in the game, they always had a win condition to play around.
And they all come together at the late game as well, right? Especially with the likes of Kindred, as Ezreal even, we saw Gangplank get so far ahead early. Late game's just a monster of the composition that came out from JD, and with the early start for his team, as well as the late game impact, picked up MVP on his Kindred performance, and rightfully so. The early game was all about this man.
Either ban it or take it away, but you can just not be freely giving Kindred over to the junglers in the LPL. We are too good at playing this champion. The Nocturne, it really didn't work out for us while it was taking off globally everywhere else, but the Kindred, we are right on that one.
Yep, Kindred's been quite a staple pick in the LPL whenever it is in meta, and since Rift Rivals, it has been. It's been picked up quite popularly.
Thank you, Score.
Quality of life changes as well as positive buffs that have just made such a big impact. And when junglers are as aggressive as what we see in the LPL, it makes sense to pick up this champion.
Yeah, it's the denying of a lot of the assassination potential, the fact that she can duel pretty much anyone, and then really great itemization at pretty much every point in the game.
And it allows them for that late game carry, which we saw from Clued as well, even though he didn't really have to, because JD had such a shellacking of a performance in game 1. We're going to go into a break. We'll be back with game 2 in just a bit.
相信这支年轻气盛的京东，相信过程。